Hello buddy, it's Wyvern here with another Total War Warhammer 2 community cast. And this time around it is some Night Goblin on Skaven action, where submitted by player CR123, where he is squaring off against the forces of Katanai. And it's definitely shaping up to be a pretty exciting match right off the bat. The Greenskin force here is a massive vanguard, but a somewhat unique one, to be quite honest. It's something you don't see all that often. For his lord, CR has decided to run with Azag. Now this one does definitely make sense. On Skullmuncher, Azag's very tough for the Skaven to snipe out, whereas someone like Wurtzag, much less a Footlord, is a much easier target for Jezzails in particular. They'll just roll over and die far too easily. Azag, on the other hand, does have the mobility to juke as long as he doesn't get snared by a warp storm. So that's definitely a big advantage for him. He also does have some nifty abilities. Life leeching, get that extra wounds of magic. He does have get on with it, which provides his troops with additional leadership. In this case, he's actually opted not to bring Spear Leech, which is definitely surprising. Instead, choosing to bring Aspect of the Dread Knight, perhaps looking to bunker bust through the Skaven, or perhaps make his own troops immune to terror. And he does also have Fate of Buna, which does once again make some sense, because with such a wide Vanguardy build, one of your biggest threats at that point will be units like Plague Monks, Censer Bearers, units such as Stormvermin. Fate of Buna will do rather well against them. He also does have WoW, of course, so this rush of green will definitely be much more powerful on the immediate charge. Now, for his composition, he has decided to roll with a horde of Night Goblins Quick Hoppers in the front line. There are, in fact, 5 units of them, including the Regiment of Renown Durkid Squigs. This is really weird. I've never actually seen somebody do Vanguard like this, because the infantry, the ones you would expect to be at the front line, are actually on the sides. We can see Night Goblins here, all in the back of the Skaven, and we also do have the Regiment of Renown AP Gloonies, who are, of course, unbreakable, deployed all the way out on the flank there. So rather than seeing a front line of infantry, we're actually seeing a front line of cavalry. And I guess it does make some sense. Chances are your opponent's anti-large troops will be on the periphery, ready to defend against cavalry vanguard, rather than the front line. There's also the fact that Squigs are immune to psychology and have high mass. So one of the big Skaven options against Greenskins, and we see that here, is, of course, Doom Wheels as well as Doom Flares. And Squig Hoppers can definitely counter that relatively effectively. They're definitely not the best unit for it. Their combat sets are just not that good, but they can at least stall them and hold them down, and they're immune to psychology, which is important. Now, besides that, we do have a firing squad of Night Goblin Archers. We do have 4 units of them, or sorry, 5. There are 4 units, and then a 5th unit, the Rusty Errors, who are the Regiment of Renown with Armor Sundering, of course. Definitely very powerful stuff. We do have a single unit of Nasty Skulkers in the back here, ready to snare opponents with Smoke Bomb. A motley assortment of goblins here in the back. Some chevron up a little bit, some not. These guys are just there, most likely because there were some points left over. We also do have an Orc-Boar Chariot, which is an odd choice in the mass goblin build. But potentially looking to dive through the enemy backline, get in on some juicy range targets, such as especially the Warlock Jezzails. We'll see how the board's performing here. Now, for Katanai's army, he has decided to roll with Lord Skrull. That's kind of to be expected. He's one of the most popular lords, and the Greenskins, who don't have the greatest lord sniping options, are not necessarily that good at hard countering him. You're not going to get sniped by Fireball or something like that, so it makes Skrull a little more reliable here. Pestilent Breath can mess up goblins very easily, so that could be terrifying. Of course, Aura of Pestilence will be debuffing them. Plague Rash weakening them over time. Vermintide, as well as Pestilent Birth, providing abilities to flank with Plague Monk summons, or potentially hold down a rampaging enemy cavalry or anything like that with those summons. We also do have Stand Your Ground to keep the troops in line, Rod of Corruption, as well as Libra Bonicus for that insane damage. And we also do have an Assassin who is coming in relatively well kitted out. He's got Assassin's Trophy, which means Azag's going to have to be wary of diving into combat. Rival High Talisman, which is a great AoE debuff, and a nice counter to WoD. It will definitely make your opponent a little weaker, at least in one area. Slippery to keep the Assassin in the fight, and of course Concealment Bombs, which are just nifty. Now we can see that the Squigs are already running in. There is a front line here of Plague Monks, Vulcan's Tail Slashers, as well as Clan Rats, so really motley assortment all over the place. We got Skaven Slaves in the back, we have Clan Rat Spears back there. Now there are some Gutter Runners with Poison, who are there set up there as a zoning tool. Some Rat Ogres in there as well. We have Rat Ogres hiding in the bushes here with the Night Runners. Now this is quite frankly a little bit of an oddball choice, because and perhaps this is just something I'm missing, but I feel like you kind of want gutter runners with poison on top of the at least if you're sort of trying to pick off a unit. And I feel like this is sort of an ambush unit, so you would, or ambush setup. So you would think that you have another unit of gutter runners there to snare the unit, prevent it from escaping as easily. If, for example, your opponent runs some cavalry or something in here. But nonetheless, this could definitely be a very nasty surprise for the poor Greenskins. We also do have a Doom Wheel as well as Doom Flayers in the back who are immediately running over the poor Goblos. And this is definitely one of the big problems. These guys are now very isolated, and they can't escape or avoid the Doom Wheel. So the Doom Wheel is just going to run them over and instantly tear around them. Night Goblins have terrible leadership, I believe. It's 44 baseline, and they're immediately routing. Now, what is going off, which is allowing these guys to close relatively quickly. If they get into charge range here, they are actually going to close the gap. And they're getting in on these gutter runners, doing a lot of damage. Looks like Katana actually decided to engage there. A lot of corruption going down on the Squigs, who are, however, melting the front line. Look at these Vulcan Stale Slashers just going down, getting munched on by those Squigs. Just do not stand a chance. And, of course, their fire damage doesn't really provide much benefit. Neither does the fire resistance in this fight. And the Squigs are just going to have a field day. They're kind of small, though. They're definitely not the biggest. Either these are some very big rats or those are some very small Squigs. But they're doing their best and definitely cleaving through these fools. In the meantime, Azag is, of course, diving in on the Warplock Jezzails. Cast Aspect of the Dread Knight on him, or I suppose an AoE to keep... No, he cast it on himself. Not entirely sure why that is. Perhaps worried about routing. Lieber Bonicus is going down him, though, as Assassin's Trophy. And he is struggling to stick around. And is forced to run like hell here because he is getting overwhelmed from all sides. Warplock Jezzails pounding away at him. Assassin's Trophy making him super vulnerable. The Katana here is trying to engage with the Gutter Runners. Poison, Rat Ogre's collapsing inward, but Azag is in full flight here. He's already lost over half his HP, so definitely some brutal stuff. But the front line is breached, and in come the Squigs. In the meantime, Gobbo's pushing forward, trying to get in there. You have the Orc Boar Chariot rushing in as well. All those non-Vanguard units are going to take a little while to get into the fight, but Night Goblin Archers are going to do some work in the meantime. And we can see Bounce of Power still hovering dead center. Jezzail's getting compromised, but at the same time, you know, these Squigs are kind of getting burned out. A lot of these Night Goblins over here did get routed off. I actually believe a unit got routed completely off the field. We do have the Clan Rat Spears now collapsing in on the Skaven. Or sorry, not on the Greenskins. So that's definitely going to be a bit of a pickle for him. In come the Boar Chariots, getting in with a nice meaty charge on these Night Runners. But then sort of... Oh no, for a second I thought they were going to peel away. But no, they plow right through, going in after the Gutter Runners. And this is definitely where they want to be in life. They will be able to do some good work. Kind of wasting the AP, but there isn't much for them to use the AP on anyway. And this is a very squishy army. In the meantime, we can see a Plague Monk summon is diving in against the backline, doing a lot of work, and unfortunately the Goblins are there. They certainly won't outfight Plague Monks, but they can bog them down, allow the shooting to escape. Azag also is coming in to provide his very, very nasty support. The normal Plague Monks are also kind of overrunning the backline, and we can see the Durkit Squigs in hot pursuit. But this is really where Azag is going to be at a bit of a risk. You can see the Warplock Jezzails here setting up, still have 19 models, and they're just wrecking his face. Nice Pestilent Breath there does melt some of the Goblin lines. And, yeah, these Goblin Archers, they are stacking on top of each other. And while they are doing a great job against this Doom Wheel for sure, they've really whittled it down by about half HP by now with the help of the Nasty Skulkers, of course. At the same time, they are kind of clumped. They are going to be compromised here pretty soon by the incoming Gutter Runners. They might be forced to retreat. Fortunately, though, Goblins will at least bog them down. But poor Azag here, just in full flight, down to 1200 HP. Really not where he wants to be in life in the jail. Azale's still chipping away. At this point, you might want to sort of pull away as far as you can until you sort of have these guys shut down. You can see the Squig Hoppers diving in against the Doom Wheel, getting a nice surround, just picking away at him. And some crazy Skaven tech against enraged bouncing balls of teeth. But one of the nice things about these Squig Hoppers is the fact that they are immune to psychology, so they're just going to stick around here against the Doom. Now, granted, here it has broken them; it's kind of killed them, but they are going to eventually break to just damage. But it's not as easy as, say, you know, the Nasty Skulkers. These guys are going to terror route right now, probably, unless they've terror routed recently and are immune. No, they just route. But this is some very brutal stuff. Can see the downside of this Greenskin force being so heavy on Goblins. They did have that initial shock rush, but now they are starting to run low on HP. A lot of their units are damaged, and because of that, their leadership is not as stable. And with even a Symphony of Terror causers, the Doom Wheel, being on the field here, it is enough to really start whittling down Green Tide and start routing them off continuously. Now, Azag over here dropping to less than 500 HP. Buy from a Lieber Bonicus dropping super quickly, down to 237 before it expires, 100 HP. Just absolutely insane, absolutely insane. And he is right on the edge of wavering, breaking, in fact. And actually, it was funny. Right now, the only thing keeping him in the fight is get on with it. If he did not have get on with it, Azag right now would be routing, and that could potentially be it for the Greenskins. It's literally that one ability keeping the Green Knight army stable right now, which is just insane. Now, fortunately, the Jezzails have, I believe, been routed off. You can see they're over here at 5 models. Squigs, though, fleeing for dear life from the Rat Ogres. We're still very healthy, so still, the Skaven actually is getting the edge in the balance of power here, sitting at about 40%, at about 60% favorability. That's only about 40% for the Green Tide. And a lot of that is really hinging on some of these key units still being very much alive. We've got Skrulk, we've got the Assassin, who, granted, is getting swarmed by Gobos, and seems to be suffering here, but you know, the lovely Assassin. We got Skrulk, we got a Doom Wheel, which could be devastating if all of the even though they're unbreakable, the AP Cloonies can't really do anything against Doom Wheel, and if all the Squigs get removed, this Doom Wheel could basically win this entire battle by itself. Archers can try to stop it, but at this point it'll be a tough sell. AP Gloonies are getting whittled down, however, and we can see Doomflayer is still very much intact. It's very healthy in Rat Ogre, so things definitely not looking ideal for the Greenskins. They do somehow pull things back a little bit. Not entirely sure what is causing that fluctuation. Might be the expenditure of ammo on the Gutter Runners. We can see arrows pouring in against the Clan Rat Summon. I think this might be a little bit of a mistake, actually, because you're probably doing more damage to your troops than it's worth against just a summon unit. But definitely, it's a bit of a desperate situation for the Greenskins. Now, fortunately, Lord Skrulk has used up both of his Bubonic, so we cannot kill Azag at this point, at least not from range, which is nice. Now, over here, the Doom Wheel is pushing in, trying to get a nice charge in against the Orc-Boar Chariots. The Orc-Boar Chariots, in turn, tying down the Doomflayers. They're very beat up, down to 2 models, and Orc-Boar Chariots do not have the best sustained combat stats by any means necessary, or by any means, I say that, but they do have better combat stats than the Doomflayers, so, except for the armor, and of course the weapon strength. But at least the sustained combats, the melee and attack and defense are better. Doomwheel, though, gets snared here, and suddenly things are looking a little grim, because the Doomwheel is getting peppered down. There's still a lot of ammo on these archers. Rusty Air is doing insane amounts of work. And it's down on 70 armor and actually getting annihilated. So definitely very well played here by CR123, knocking out that Doom Wheel. And it is going to go down, just exploding into a pile of debris there. And suddenly, some things are looking up for the Green Tide. The Assassin is getting swarmed. And one of the things you often see is the bounces of power sort of propped up by a single very powerful character. But oftentimes in the late game situation, a single character cannot stand up, even against relatively weak infantry. They will get surrounded, they will start getting whittled down. So with this Assassin about to die, and Lord Skrulk starting to feel the hurt, and these Rat Ogres routing from Azag, who actually dived in, a really gutsy move there, going in after the Rat Ogres. But he managed to tear out the Rat Ogres. So I think things are looking a lot less positive. Now, nice Pestilent Breath over there on the Night Goblin Squig Hoppers. This is one of those things I was mentioning with how they're crammed together so much. That makes them an incredibly easy target. The Rat Ogres, though, getting wailed on by the archers, cannot hold up against firepower of this magnitude, and they really cannot hold. They're forced to flee here, just running away on all fours, like the filthy beasts they are. And I don't know if they'll be coming back, to be honest. Besides that, well, the Doomflayers are still around. This could be a big problem. The Orc-Boar Chariot is, at this point, getting chased off. I think with the loss of the Doom Wheel, this battle is looking to become a lot more interesting, because with no terror on the field for the Skaven, they cannot get any of those super quick routes anymore. They can get Fear in there, they can certainly route some units, but you can see CR is using Aspect of the Dread Knight to keep his troops in line. And suddenly, the Skaven are really low on troops. All they have is Doomflayers, really, and Skrulk. But right now, if Azag had Spear Lead, Skrulk would probably be in really big trouble. But even like this, he's getting pounded on by the goblins and slowly but surely losing HP. He only has 45 melee defense, so when he's surrounded, he is going to get torn apart. Now, there is still a tide of Skaven scum pouring back into the fray. The Doomflayers, of course, can rack up insane amounts of kills. There's very little to control them here at this stage of the game. And archers are not particularly good against Doomflayers because of how small they are and how janky some of their animations are. But the Boar Chariot does dive in here on Rod of Corruption Lord Skrulk, who is trying to melt away these Rusty Airs. And is promptly going to pull away, trying to just scrape away and keep these guys intact. It makes sense. They're one of his last time-mass units and one of the last units that can really stop these Doomflayers from running amok, even if for a very short amount of time. And things are shaping up to come right down to the wire. You can see the goblins here are swarming all over. We do see a Fate of Buna going down on the Doomflayers. I guess it makes sense. There's really no other target, and you've only got 2 spells, so might as well use what you got. It is not doing very much at all, but, you know, better than nothing. Rusty Airs are wailing on these guys. Actually do manage to break their armor a little bit. And the Doomflayers are being pressured into the fight here, trying to get in to save Skrull. Skrull is surrounded and getting it wailed on. Now, Clanrat Summon here is going to pressure the archers away, but you know, Doomflayer is starting to suffer down to 2,500 HP. Azag still flying overhead, going to go for a cheeky charge here, which holy hell, I would not go for this right now. You can see that assassin just diving around. Feel the hype for Snitch. He's going to have triple swords, so he'll be even more OP. But Azag does dive in, sending some of his own combos flying. But he is going to manage to actually tear out by this assassin, which is a big win. Getting rid of one of the last Sinclair into the unit, one of the last characters for the Skaven, is going to be a big problem. Not so power is still in the Skaven's favor, but I think at this point we're reaching that stage where, well, it's really the Doomflayers. Can the Doomflayers carry this? Because if they can't, Skrull isn't going to. Skrull will get surrounded even by this crappy Gobbo infantry, and he will beat them down. We can see that CR is detaching some of his troops here to chase out the Skaven. Katana, though, staying very much on top of his micro, using his Doomflayers to run over these rusty airs, bouncing back and forth, and routing off a lot of the peripheral Greenskin units. So there's a lot of on-point micro, keeping the Skaven continuously flooding back, but at the same time, the Greenskins, of course, trying to keep them away from this main engagement, keep them away from Skrull. Poor Gobbos here do rout. Leadership just can't hold up. Rusty Airs, though, if they do come back, could be a big game changer. Armor Sundering could still help against Doomflayers. Over here, Azag, you can see just, even though he's crippled at that 25 HP, that extra leadership is keeping in the fray, and he is being used in a really cheeky manner here to break off some of these reinforcing units. Just diving in, sends the assassin flat on his rear, and before the assassin can get back up with and counterattack, Azag is wandering away and taking back the skies, escaping from potential death. Now, the Gutter Runners here sticking in the fight. Stand your ground is helping them here. That is one nice thing about Skrull, just having that stand your ground. Hail of Arrows coming in as well. The AP Gloonies are in there. Rod of Corruption going down. This, in my opinion, is a little bit of a mistake, just crowding in. I get that he's trying to prevent the Skaven from... from escaping, but right now with how close it is, Rod of Corruption could potentially just swing the tide. It is just melting this entire blob of infantry, and especially the AP Gloonies route units like that are destroyed, or the AP Gloonies die and units are here routed. That could be a disaster. But Azag does come down. He's going to drop down on top of the Doomflayers as well as a Skrull, and that is actually going to be GG as the entire Skaven army is routed. So swinging back from about a 40-60 deficit to win, definitely some pretty insane plays. I thought both armies here were really pretty interesting and pretty well thought out in some ways. The play with the Night Goblin Squig Hoppers was something I have not personally seen done, and I personally actually like Vanguard builds against Skaven. I think they're very strong because you negate the Skaven's massive range advantage. So in my opinion, Vanguard builds with Goblins are really good. But usually I try to invest, I just bring a handful of Night Goblin Squig Hoppers and then try to invest much more heavily into Night Gobbos and frontline infantry. But CR just kind of flipped that on his head and decided to go with a front line of Cav, and I think in some ways it makes sense. It'll throw your opponent in for a twist. Now, that said, it did mean that the Doomwheel and Doomflayers just managed to run over the Goblins. I think one thing, if I was going to say one major mistake Katana made, in my opinion, it was the fact that he engaged and early on, that he gave the Greenskins the engage. Now, it is difficult to avoid a wad-up engage, but in my opinion, it would have been better to just fall back with his front line as much as possible. Just try to avoid the squigs as much as possible. Just drop summons in their path just to stall them out, whatever you need. And then try to crush this back line of goblins. Because if you manage to pick off like 3 units of Night Goblins, that's these guys are all 400 apiece. So you're looking at 1,200 gold. You took it, especially with the chevrons. You're looking at about 10% of your opponent's army that you chased off the field, which is a good win. Even if you lose like a single, like you could throw in some trash units into the field. Hell, you could throw in like the Clan Vulcan Stale Slashers or something just to stall, and like a few summons. Just buy yourself a handful of seconds of time, and in the meantime focus on just crushing this backline. I think you'd be in a much better spot because due to that, surround CR was continuously able to apply pressure from all sides. The squigs busted through the frontline infantry while all of the big stuff was bogged down, killing off the goblins. And I think that snowballed in the long run. And the match was really close. It came right down to the wire, and that's like that's almost an understatement because Azag was literally down to 25 HP. It could have, a single shot from a Giselle could have changed the entire course of that battle. So really small things could have made all the difference there, and I think that might have been one of them. For CR, I think the main critique would have been diving Azag into the fray so early. I think it would have been better to stay on the periphery and kind of hover on the edges early on. I know it's difficult with a relatively expensive Lord that you want in the fight, but especially with Gisele's on the field, diving in and giving them an opportunity to snipe you is, in my opinion, not the greatest idea. And I think, second of all, I think trying to cram in a Spear Leech might have been good. Strip some of the chevrons off. Like, I get you're trying to keep the goblins in the fight, but at the same time, if you're not over chevroning them a whole bunch, the edge it gives them is not really that big. So I think it would be better to just ditch the chevrons, get Spear Leech on Azag. In the late game situation where you were trying to snipe out or help snipe out Doomflayers with Fate of Buna, it would have been better to have a Spear Leech there, or just help snipe out Skrulk or any of these characters. Not necessarily replace Fate of Buna. I think that's actually a smart move with this cheap Gabo-centric army, but or just adding Spirit Leech in there to give you a decent counter to some of these really troublesome units, especially Doomflayers, which are tough to handle. And once Azag was and the Durkits and the Squayhoppers were gone, the Doomflayers could almost have free reign on most of this army. With good micro, they can really get away with a lot. But regardless, really well played to both players. Huge thanks to CR123 for submitting the replay. I do hope you guys enjoyed. If you enjoy these community casts and would like to see more of them, well, it depends on you guys. Just be sure to send me in your replays. I will be leaving a you can submit them to wyverngamingreplays@gmail.com, and I will certainly be checking them out. Whatever you send me, choose your best replays, or just replays if you just want some critique, if you've got a specific replay or build that you would like to share, whatever it may be, certainly feel free to submit it, and I'd be more than happy to cast it and go over the game. So for all the Americans watching, very happy Thanksgiving. Really enjoy your holiday. I know I'm going to be enjoying some good old turkey and mashed potatoes. So hopefully you guys can as well. And I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.